Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic. As the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. Here are tonight's news. First, in the Philippines, Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez explained how to avail of the low-interest loans in the recovery program for MSMEs or MSMEs. Under a microfinancing loan program, existing micro and small enterprises can now tap assistance to restart their businesses after they've been affected by the lockdown measures taken by the government to contain COVID-19. Take a look.
Opo, kung kukumpitin natin kung assuming mga 20,000 ang pautang sa bawat mag-uutang na micro, pwedeng umabot ito sa 50,000 na borrowers. Pero kung again, pwedeng the reverse, kung ang magiging average ay mga 50,000 naman ng pautang, ay pwedeng umabot lamang ito sa 20,000 borrowers kasi 1 billion sa ngayon ang na-budget po dito na mababang interest, 0.5% per month or 6% per year at may 6-month grace period bago magkaroon ng long-term payment na 2 years or 24 months. So maliit po yan kung libo lamang ang pag-uusapan ng mga borrowers. Dahil alam natin kung ang micro-entrepreneur ay lagpas 1 million po yan. Kaya nga meron timing yung panukalang batas mula sa Kongreso at sa Senado na madagdagan itong pondo na to dahil ito naman pong serbisyo na to maibibigay natin to the extent meron pong budget. At ang ambisyon po, ang plano po dito sa panibagong suporta na ibibigay ng ating Kongreso at Senado ay sana zero interest pa ito na pwede ibigay dito po sa Small Business Corporation at ito po magpapautang. Pwede rin po itong maibigay dito sa mga iba ring financial institutions po na tulad ng Land Bank at ng DBP. Ang importante meron pondo na makarating sa ating mga micro SMEs dahil sila po, they account for 70% ng mga empleyo dito po sa ating bansa. So, mahalagang magtuloy-tuloy ang kanilang negosyo, maka-restart sila para hindi rin sila mag-lay off ng mga empleyado at tuloy-tuloy yung income ng mga empleyado nila. Para pag may income sila, meron pong matuloy, ma-revive ang demand ng mga produkto at sa ganon ay iikot na ang gulong ng ekonomiya ulit. Pag may demand na kasi, mas gaganahan at dadami uli ang mga magpuproduce nitong mga produkto po. And of course, kasama na dyan yung ating paghikayat ng ating mga kababayan to buy locally made products.
Meanwhile, the Department of Labor and Employment said the number of displaced workers due to coronavirus disease is now over 2.7 million. And the data from the agency's Bureau of Local Employment showed the affected workers has reached 2,757,640. Meanwhile, Dole explained back to work guidelines as the country slowly reopens its economy. Take a look.
Lopez ng TTI, meron kaming guidelines on how to prevent and protect our workers when they go back to work. Essentially, madali lang yan. Pagpasok mo ng opisina, kailangan dumaan ka dun sa kukuha ng temperature mo. Tapos maghuhugas ka ng alcohol. Tapos aapakan mo yung carpet doon na meron disinfectant. In the meantime, you have to be wearing your face mask. Ayan. And then, of course, the most important thing is you must observe yung social distancing para maiwasan ang pagpasok at pag-transmit ng COVID-19.
Secretary, isa po sa requirement ng mga empleyado yung pong pag-submit ng kanilang health checklist. Maaari niyo po bang ibahagi kung ano-ano po yung nakapaloob dito at ano po ang kahalagahan ng pagkakaroon nito?
Yung ano lang naman yan, checklist kung ano yung mga sintomas na nasa kanila, kung halimbawa inuubo sila, nagkakaroon sila ng diarrhea, or any symptomatic expression na maaaring determine kung yung ating worker ay symptomatic.
Meanwhile, the number of confirmed coronavirus disease cases in the country has reached 14,319, with 284 more persons contracting the disease. The Department of Health, in its case bulletin Monday, also reported that there are 74 new recoveries and 5 new deaths. The total number of recovered cases nationwide is 3,323, while the death toll has climbed to 873. Out of the 284 new cases, the DOH said 171 cases, or 60%, came from the National Capital Region, 70 cases, or 25%, from Region 7, that is the Central Visayas, and the remaining 43 cases, or 15%, from other regions. Currently, the total number of active cases nationwide is 10,123. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has lifted the coronavirus state of emergency in Tokyo and 4 other remaining areas following a sharp decline in cases. But officials have warned caution that it is still necessary to prevent another wave. Dennis Liu joins us live from Japan. Dennis.
Hello, good evening, Alma,
Good evening,
and
Dennis.
to all our televiewers tonight. Here are my news updates. Japan lifted a nationwide state of emergency over the coronavirus on Monday, gradually reopening the world's third largest economy. But government officials warned caution was still necessary to prevent another wave. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe told a nationally televised news conference said that very stringent criteria for lifting the state of emergency have been met. Compared with hard-hit areas in Europe, the United States, Russia, and Brazil, Japan has been spared the worst of the pandemic, with 16,581 infections and 830 deaths. The number of new infections has fallen from a peak of around 700 per day to just a few dozen nationally. Tokyo reported 8 cases of infection on Monday. The emergency was lifted for much of the country last week, but the government opted to wait before removing the measures in the capital and surrounding areas, as well as hard-hit northern Hokkaido. Abe lauded Japan's success in flattening the curve, saying the country was able to show the strength of the so-called Japan model. But he warned that people would have to adapt to a new normal and continue to avoid the 3 C's: closed spaces, crowded places, and close contact. There does not appear to be a single clear reason why the pandemic was not hit Japan as hard as other comparable countries. High levels of hygiene and general health, the habit of removing shoes indoors, widespread mask usage, and bowing as a greeting rather than shaking hands or kissing, all have been advanced as possible reasons, but analysts agree there has been no silver bullet. Japan has come under fire for a relatively low level of testing, with around 270,000 carried out, the lowest per capita rate in the group of 7 advanced economies, according to Worldometer. The Japanese authorities insist that mass testing was never their strategy, as cases remained low enough to rely on aggressive contact tracing to contain clusters. Nevertheless, testing has been ramped up in recent weeks as authorities warn of a possible next wave of the virus that could overwhelm their previous strategy. Back to you, Alma.
Okay, so can you take us to the through the phases, Dennis? So what can we expect from the lifting of emergency throughout the nation?
After the emergency is lifted, the government will establish a transitional period and assess the infection situation every 3 weeks. meaning requests for people to stay at home and avoid large gatherings may be eased only gradually. Economic Revitalization Minister Yasutoshi Nishimura said the government will continue to ask people to refrain from crossing prefectural borders until the end of the month. The panel of infectious disease and public health experts is considering the number of newly reported cases over the past week, the availability of medical care, and the capacity to provide virus tests and monitor the spread of the virus. One benchmark is whether new infections have fallen below 0.5 per 100,000 people in the past week, and all but two prefectures, Kanagawa and Hokkaido, have cleared that threshold. Meanwhile, Tokyo Governor Yuriko Koike has unveiled a three-stage plan to relax restrictions imposed over the coronavirus, allowing restaurants and eateries to stay open longer and schools to gradually resume classes. In the first phase, which will likely begin Tuesday, museums and libraries will open while restaurants and eateries will be allowed to stay open until 10 p.m. later than 8 p.m. as permitted under the emergency declaration. The second phase may begin by the end of the month, Metropolitan Government sources said, enabling more facilities such as movie theaters and shops selling products other than daily necessities to reopen. However, karaoke parlors, live music venues, and gyms, places where the risk of group transmission is high, will be asked to remain closed. Alma?
All right. Thank you very much, Dennis, for your updates. Thank you, Dennis at EBC Japan Bureau.
Oh, here in Tokyo, out of the 5.6, by the way,
Yes.
million gift masks, we just got our share of the controversial Aveno mask by Post today.
Oh.
2 cloth masks per household, as what the government wanted everyone to stay healthy, wear mask when talking and going out.
Okay.
Alma?
Okay, so every household gets two masks?
Yes, that's right, Alma.
Okay, so even if you're a 4 family member, you just get 2 masks. Or each member get 2 masks.
That's right. But this is a cloth type of mask, so it's washable.
Ah, it's washable.
Yes. And it's a little shorter than the ordinary mask. A little shorter, but yes. It's much thicker, though.
Okay. So do you get that every month?
No, just once.
Just once.
Just
okay.
this time. This time, Alma.
All right. Thank you, Dennis, for your updates. And thank you for showing us the mask. Thank you, Japan
You're welcome,
Bureau.
Alma. Reporting live from Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Liu. We live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, China on Monday threatened countermeasures against the United States if it was punished for plans to impose a sedition law on Hong Kong that the business hub security chief hailed as a new tool that would defeat terrorism. Beijing plans to pass a new security law for Hong Kong that bans treason, subversion, and sedition after months of massive, often violent pro-democracy protests last year. Take a look.
中方坚决反对美方一些政客就中国全国人大会议涉港议程发出的各种声音、各种噪音，已经向美方提出严正交涉。香港特区立什么法、怎么立法、何时立法，完全是中国主权范围内的事，美国没有资格指手画脚、插手干预。如果美方执意损害中方利益，中方必将采取一切必要措施，予以坚决回击和反制。美国自身针对国家安全问题制定了几十部法律，竭力打造维护本国国家安全的铜墙铁壁。 却对中国的国家安全立法横加干涉，甚至企图在中国国家安全网上凿墙破洞。这种双重标准的做法，充分暴露出美国一些人的险恶用心。
As police dispersed the crowds with tear gas and water cannon, Washington's National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien warned the new law could cost the city its preferential U.S. trading status. But China's foreign ministry said Beijing would react to any sanctions from Washington. Hong Kong has become the latest flashpoint in soaring tensions between the world's two superpowers, which China has likened to the brink of a new Cold War. The refusal to grant Hong Kongers democracy has sparked rare bipartisan support in an otherwise bitterly divided Washington during the Trump administration. Beijing portrays the city's protests as a foreign-backed plot to destabilize the motherland and says other nations have no right to interfere in how the international business hub is run. Protesters who have hit the streets in their millions say they are motivated by years of Beijing chipping away at the city's freedom since it was handed back to China by Britain in 1997. Hong Kong enjoys liberties unseen on the mainland, as well as its own legal system and trade status. Campaigners view the security law proposal as the most brazen move yet by Beijing to end free speech and the city's ability to make its own laws. Of particular concern is a provision allowing Chinese security agents to operate in Hong Kong, with fears it could spark a crackdown on those voicing dissent against China's communist rulers. On the mainland, subversion laws are routinely wielded against critics. The proposed law, which China's rubber-stamp legislature is expected to act on quickly, will also bypass Hong Kong's own legislature. The city's influential bar association on Monday described the proposed motion as, quote, worrying and problematic, and warned it may even breach the territory's mini constitution. Hong Kong's unpopular pro-Beijing government has welcomed the law. Security Minister John Lee said in a statement welcoming the planned legislation, and I quote, terrorism is crowding in the city and is growing in the city, and activities which harm national security, such as Hong Kong independence, become more rampant. Police Chief Chris Tang cited 14 recent cases where explosives had been seized and said the new law would help combat the force of Hong Kong independence and restore social order. Last year's protests were initially sparked by plans to allow extraditions to the mainland, but soon snowballed into a popular revolt against Beijing and the city's police force. In the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the phased reopening of schools is crucial for children. So parents and teachers should now prepare for the phased reopening of schools in England to start on June 1st, as planned. We have an update coming in from Aribel Celestino. Hello, Aribel.
Hi, Alma. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you. Not too bad.
Okay. So what are your updates from the United Kingdom? Yes. School opening.
So here's an update from the UK. Primary schools in England are to reopen to some pupils from June 1. Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced on Sunday. Here's Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Let's listen in.
3,458,905 tests for coronavirus have now been carried out in the UK, including 110,401 tests carried out yesterday. And sadly, of those tested positive for coronavirus across all settings, 36,793 have now died. That's an increase of 118 fatalities since yesterday. But today, I can confirm that I do believe we will be in a position to move to step 2 of our plan. As part of step 2, we set out plans for a phased reopening of schools. So we said we would begin with early years settings and reception, year 1 and year 6 in primary schools. Early years reception, year 1 and year 6. And today, I can announce that it is our intention to go ahead with that as planned on June the 1st, a week on Monday. We then intend, from June the 15th, for secondary schools to provide some contact for Year 10 and Year 12 students to help them prepare for exams next year, with up to a quarter of these students in at any point.
Okay. Only reception pupils aged 4 to 5 in first year of school, those aged 5 to 6 in year 1, and those aged 10 to 11 in their final primary year will return initially, he told a news conference. Secondary school pupils will come back later, with some contact between teachers and older children preparing for exams from June 15, he added. Reopening schools has been controversial, with Britain having the highest coronavirus death rate in Europe. According to the latest government figures, only 37,000 people have died after testing positive. Broader statistics, including suspected cases, puts the figure at over 41,000. Teaching unions last week urged the government to reconsider plans to reopen, as it gradually eases lockdown restrictions, given lingering concerns over health and safety. Several local authorities across England have already ruled out a return on June 1. And schools remain shut in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, where education is a devolved matter. Schools will return part-time in Scotland from August 11, while Wales has not set a date for return. In Northern Ireland, pupils will only come back from September. On Friday, the government's Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies said evidence remains inconclusive on both susceptibility and infectivity of children, and it added the balance of evidence suggests that both may be lower than in adults. Alma?
Okay, so Prime Minister Johnson's push to reopen schools, as you reported earlier, is facing some resistance. Can you, parents, take us through the phases? What can we expect with the reopening of schools on June 1st?
Yeah, that's true, Alma. The Prime Minister is sticking to his date for schools opening, but acknowledged that it might not be possible for all of them to do so by June 1. He also said that the government was being deliberately cautious and that a final decision will be taken on Thursday as part of the formal review into the lockdown measures. But today, the government released its plans for keeping school children safe from coronavirus, including keeping the youngest children 3.5 meters apart, and a queuing system for the school run. The main steps outlined in the guidance for teachers are: children under 2 years need 3.5 meters squared per child. 2 years old need 2.5 meters squared per child, and children aged 3 to 5 need 2.3 meters squared per child. Once children have returned, make sure any surfaces touch or clean several times a day. Consider how you can keep small, consistent groups of children together throughout the day. Staff will have to implement some kind of queuing system when picking up the children to avoid contact with carers. Dividers could help children in different parts of the room. Remove all soft toys or any toys that are hard to clean. To reduce the risk of infections, ensure children with symptoms and staff who are symptomatic to not come in. Ensure social distancing of groups of children and staff as much as possible. Ensure hands are washed regularly throughout the day and children are observed doing so. Ensuring you have a good supply of disposable tissues throughout the setting to implement catch it, bin it, and kill it. arranging for children to be collected at the door if possible. Limit visitors and keep windows open for ventilation. And institutions should have a policy in place for responding to a case of coronavirus. That's it. Back to you, Alma.
All right, thank you very much. Good guidelines. Maybe we can apply it here as well. Thank you so much, Belle, for your updates. Thank you, EBC UK Bureau.
Thank you so much, Alma. Reporting from the United Kingdom, I'm Arabelle Celestino, and we live in interesting times.
All right, to the United States now. The U.S. was singularly unprepared to respond to the coronavirus pandemic and suffers from a lack of coherent leadership. Now, that is according to U.S. linguist and philosopher Noam Chomsky. Now, this video is part of a series of interviews from AFP, A World Redrawn, discussing life after the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's listen to this first part.
There's no coherent leadership. It's chaotic. The presidency, the White House, is in the hands of a sociopathic megalomaniac who's interested in nothing but his own power, electoral prospects, doesn't care what happens to the country, to the world. It's one thing after another. It's total chaos. So state among his voting base, there are lots of people who don't like international organizations, think we're on top, we should be by ourselves, nobody tells us anything. So it's good to pick up some votes from these sectors if you defund and maybe move on to disband the WHO. Of course, it has consequences. The WHO is providing services. There are people all over Africa who rely on the World Health Organization for protection from disease, multiple diseases. Now, of course, with the virus, it would be even worse. As soon as Trump came in, his first move was to dismantle the entire pandemic prevention machinery and to start defunding the Center for Disease Control, which would deal with this, and canceling programs that were working with Chinese scientists to identify potential viruses. So the U.S. was singularly unprepared. Now, the United States is at the bottom of the barrel. The administration simply wouldn't listen. U.S. intelligence was bombarding the White House through January and February, saying there's a serious pandemic coming. We've got to do something. Couldn't get through. Trump only looks at his TV ratings and the stock market, which he thinks is important for his election. Maybe 70% of the population, something roughly like that. It just gets by from 1 week to the next, one paycheck to the next paycheck. Anything goes wrong, they don't have anything. The United States doesn't have, has very weak unemployment insurance as compared to other countries. That doesn't have daycare facilities. Nothing's there. It's a privatized society. Very wealthy, enormous advantages, far more than any other country. But it's in the stranglehold of private control, the ultimate neoliberal system. Actually, you bear in mind that severe as this pandemic is, it's not our worst problem. There will be recovery from the pandemic at severe cost. But there isn't going to be any recovery from the melting of the polar ice caps and the rising of sea level and the other deleterious effects of global warming.
Staying in the United States, the New York State reopened beaches during the Memorial Day weekend that traditionally marks the beginning of the summer season. Take a look.
You know, to tell you the truth, I'm glad it's a cloudy weather. You know, I'm glad it's cold because you know what? We don't need this kind of big weekends. Keep away. It's too many people. They can't afford that thing now. Usually, if it was a nice weather, regular, normal time, you can have millions of people. You don't want that.
As long as people are distancing, I feel comfortable. And I feel like it gives them some exercise and some normalcy for my children and for myself. We need an outlet to get out of the house. I think mental health is not being talked about enough.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau slammed unacceptable attacks on Canadians of Asian origin who've been the target of increasing abuse since the outbreak of the coronavirus. The Prime Minister denounced the significant increase in acts of racism against Asian Canadians during his daily press briefing. Let's listen in.
I want to close today by addressing the significant increase in acts of racism against Asian Canadians. Over the past few weeks and months, businesses, buildings, and statues have been vandalized. People have been verbally abused and physically attacked. It's unacceptable. Hate, violence, and discrimination have no place in Canada. This is not who we are as Canadians. I want to thank those who have stood up against violence and exposed what is happening in our communities. We need to speak out against racism wherever it is found so we can stop it. To Asian Canadians across the country, know that we all stand with you. We will not let hate divide us.
Police in the Western City have reported an increase in reports of anti-Asian hate-motivated incidents and criminal acts since the outbreak of the virus. Since the beginning of the year, there have been 20 anti-Asian attacks reported to police there against 12 in the whole of 2019, and of those, 15 were in April. Vancouver police had previously warned of a surge in hate crimes against the city's East Asian community this spring. A man approached an Asian victim at a bus stop and punched her in the face, according to police. And the police also said the assault appears unprovoked, as there appears to be no communication between the victim and the attacker. Huffington Post reported that in another incident, a 92-year-old man with dementia was attacked in a convenience store. The suspect, who police have since identified, yelled racist remarks at the victim, including comments about COVID-19. He shoved the victim, who fell to the ground and hit his head. Vancouver Police Deputy Chief Constabulary Howard Chow at a news conference said they're handling 29 open cases of anti-Asian crimes, including racial slurs, vandalism, and assaults, compared to 4 by the same time this year. A Calgary Chinese restaurant received an anonymous threat one evening in March, which police there said is believed to have been motivated by pandemic-related racism. And Edmonton police also have reported several cases of hateful graffiti directed towards the Asian community. Now, such attacks have been on the rise around the world since the virus was first detected in China in late 2019, with more and more Asians or people of Asian origin having to face anti-Chinese outbursts. A moderate 5.6 magnitude earthquake rattled New Zealand's North Island early Monday, but failed to crack Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern's trademark composure as she conducted a live television interview. Take a look.
Joining us now is the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. Good morning to you. Can I say congratulations on this? And
You may.
Nothing I love more than burning regulations. Does this mean Clark can now build a shed out the back?
No, it does not, because he already has a shed, and the last thing we need is another shed for Clark. He has 2.
But it is.
We're just having a bit of an earthquake here, Ryan. Quite a decent shake here.
All right.
But if you see things moving behind me,
Has it stopped,
the
Prime
beehive
Minister?
moves a little more than most.
Has it stopped, Prime Minister, or is it still going?
Yep, no, it's just stopped.
Okay, and you're feeling safe and well to continue the interview?
No, We're fine, Ryan.
All
I'm not
right.
under any hanging lights. I look like I'm in a structurally sound,
Okay, all right.
sound place.
St. John Ambulance and New Zealand Police both said there were no initial reports of injuries or damage. There was no tsunami warning, but there was sustained shaking in Wellington, where Prime Minister Ardern was being interviewed on breakfast television from Parliament's Beehive building, which is designed to absorb seismic forces by swaying slightly on its foundations. The quake struck just off the coast before 8 a.m. local time at a depth of about 52 kilometers near Levin, about 90 kilometers north of Wellington, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. New Zealand lies on the Pacific Basin Ring of Fire, where tectonic plates collide, generating more than 15,000 earthquakes a year, although only 100 to 150 are strong enough to be felt. With the new normal measures in place and schools try to reopen in the coming days, schools are also rushing to provide online graduation programming. We have a report coming in from Lisa Ducena from our Arizona Bureau.
The University of Arizona, please move your tassels from the right to the left side.
Graduation 2020 is sporting a different look this year as universities and schools, adjusting to shelter-in-place mandates, employ different solutions to an old-time tradition.
To me, a graduation ceremony is very important because it's an event where an individual can celebrate all their accomplishments that they've achieved during their college career. It's also a time for family and friends to pretty much celebrate such a huge milestone in one's life.
You go to college with this understanding that you're going to work 4 hard years to learn and gain an opportunity that not everybody has a chance to, which is a college degree. And once you finish college, this is an accomplishment. It's something that you look forward to in these 4 years of sleeping late and working, grinding, and everything like that, making ends meet while trying to attain that degree. And you get to the end and there's nothing.
That's pretty much how many of the graduates of 2020 have been feeling since schools moved to distance learning earlier this year. These two graduates took different paths on their journey to the big day. Mark was born in Oakland, California, but moved to Tucson to major in business at the University of Arizona. Even though he had multiple scholarships that he would lose, Mark switched to chemical engineering after interning at a company in Los Angeles, California in 2015. The classes were more challenging and the costs were substantially higher, but Mark had found his true path. Having finished, Mark was looking forward to celebrating with friends and family to thank them for their support. Kenneth started out as a Marine, taking classes at night. He continued night school while working at a diesel repair company. He first chose to major in mechanical engineering, but after trying out a few classes, he decided to follow the advice of his counselor, who helped him realize he had a knack for speaking and working with people. Kenneth graduates with a degree in psychology with a minor in government and public policy. Just finishing school became a challenge for many students when forced to switch to distance learning.
It's very difficult, actually. You have to manage your time a lot better. You have to keep yourself accountable for finishing all your schoolwork and just meeting all the due dates. And I found that very difficult, especially without my classmates right by my side pushing. We were always pushing each other to do the very best. We wouldn't take any shortcuts, and we would pretty much put in our all just to, get an A on an assignment. And that was very hard to do on your own, especially when you're stuck indoors. I'm surrounded by 4 walls at all times.
We're social beings, so we can require that human interaction. Psychologically speaking, it's not necessary. It's not good for you to be isolated. That's why it's kind of considered like a punishment to go to solitary confinement when you're in prison. It's just not good for the overall being. It affects you psychosomatically as well. So when you're by yourself and you end up overthinking, it affects your body negatively.
That's why it's so important for universities to make that special effort to start new traditions with the class of 2020. University of Arizona included virtual reenactments of certain graduation traditions. Noting that it wasn't just graduates affected by the pandemic, the university used the occasion to allow their their international championship a cappella team the platform to perform the set they had hoped would win them another championship.
Even after death.
Allison Levine delivered an exceptionally inspiring and comforting speech geared specifically towards the challenges the class of 2020 faced.
Now, you will encounter storms on your climb that will force you to change direction. That's okay. Progress is not necessarily linear. During an Everest climb, you may retreat back to base camp many times during the expedition in order to allow your body to adjust to the altitude. This is not losing ground, but rather gaining strength. Often you have to go backward in order to move forward, but backing up is not the same as backing down. Come on, that's a pretty good line, right?
It's a speech every graduate should hear, focused on the lessons she learned during her first attempt to climb Mount Everest. In lieu of walking the stage to receive diplomas, graduates were asked to submit slides with their photos or videos and quotes or greetings they wanted on screen. It was a good way to get to know each of their classmates, even if they'd never met. But was it enough?
They tried to make us feel special on our actual graduation day by showing us that they didn't forget about us. So I really applaud them for, doing that for us and trying to give us the graduation ceremony that was supposed to happen on that day.
They're not, required or obligated to do these things for you, but they put themselves out there. Even though it's a virtual graduation, they still have to go out on campus out of the safety of their own homes to ensure that things happen for these graduates. So I feel very touched, I guess you could say, that they're doing these efforts to ensure that there is some form of virtual graduation or recognition for these students that are not receiving what they're due.
I'm pretty sure a whole bunch of graduates are feeling a little bit down that we didn't get to celebrate or have a traditional graduation ceremony, but I think we'll eventually we'll eventually get over it.
No matter the situation, that we just keep moving forward. We can't go back, we can't change things in our past, but we can make the best of what we have in our future. So rather than feeling down or whatever the case may be about the situation that we're in, we should just be positive and be productive with what we have and move forward with it.
Everything that we've learned in college, all the knowledge and skills that we have gained, we're going to use it to help better our society moving forward. And we're going to pretty much build a society that the future generation can enjoy.
Strong words of advice from two very promising members of the class of 2020. Congratulating the class of 2020 around the world, from Phoenix, Arizona, Lisa Docena, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Lisa. Meanwhile, the Iglesia de Cristo in Barcelona held an Aid to Humanity amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Lori and Andrea reports from Barcelona.
Spain is one of the countries in Europe that is severely affected by COVID-19 disease. There are many steps taken to help this country, just like what members of the Church of Christ here in Barcelona, Spain, who organized an event called Aid to Humanity or Lingap sa Mamamayan to help our fellow countrymen in need. The COVID-19 crisis posed a danger not only to the health but also to the livelihood of many Filipinos here in Spain. Large percentage of the economy of Spain is based on tourism. So now the lockdown has affected workers in cafeterias, restaurateurs, and hotels where many of our countrymen have temporarily stopped or others have lost their jobs. That is why our fellow Filipinos are grateful to the members of the Church of Christ here in Barcelona, Spain for their help distributed during the event called Aid to Humanity or Lingap sa Mamamayan. The goodwill bags are provided to meet the basic needs of our countrymen. The Aid to Humanity project of the Church of Christ has not only helped our countrymen by giving goodwill bags, but it has also given our fellow Filipinos hope that even in times of crisis, they will still feel love and compassion. Reporting from Barcelona, Spain, I am Lorian Andrianor, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Lorian. Eagle News, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Global stock markets were firmer Monday, buoyed by the prospects of further easing of coronavirus lockdowns despite sharp increases in case rates in some countries such as Brazil. In European midday trade Monday, Paris was up about 1.1% and Frankfurt 1.67%, helped by a more positive German business confidence report for May compared with a disaster showing in April. Public holidays in Britain and the U.S. meant trade was relatively low-key, however. In Asia, Tokyo ended 1.7% higher. Sydney added more than 2%. Shanghai put on 0.2%. And Hong Kong, after a morning drop, edged up 0.1% after losses of more than 5% Friday, and despite violent weekend protests at China's plan to impose a security law that would effectively suppress the former British colonies' pro-democracy movement. Meanwhile, domestic flights resumed in India even as the coronavirus cases surged there, while confusion about quarantine rules prompted jitters among the passengers and the cancellation of dozens of planes. Take a look.
Everybody is scared, but at the same time we have to do what we have to do. So because this is necessary for me to come and meet my family. It's been 3 months I've been there because of lockdown. I was stuck. So it was tough for me, so that's why I had to come down here. Everybody is a bit scared about traveling, and it is the first day, the first experience. We are the stakeholders, we are traveling on the very first day. So yes, it is a bit scary, but it's okay. Everyone is wearing mask. Mask is not for ourselves, mask is for others.
India halted almost all commercial air travel in late March as it sought to stop the spread of the coronavirus with the world's largest lockdown. But desperate to get the economy moving again, the government announced last week that around 1,050 daily flights, a third of usual capacity, would restart today. Aviation Minister Hardeep Singh Puri said strict rules would include mandatory mask wearing and thermal screenings, although middle seats on the aircraft would not be kept empty. The announcement reportedly caught airlines and state authorities off guard, with several local governments announcing that passengers would have to go into quarantine for 2 weeks on arrival. Cabin crew on the planes had to wear full protective suits with masks, plastic visors, and blue rubber gloves, and many were also confused about the rules. According to the Press Trust of India, there is no clarity on whether I need to go into home quarantine for 14 days after returning to my base or show up for duty on Monday, one pilot told PTI. New coronavirus cases in India crossed 6,000 for the third consecutive day on Sunday, surging to a record single-day spike of 6,767 infections. The country has recorded almost 140,000 cases and over 4,000 deaths. Meanwhile, Germany's economy ministry on Monday unveiled plans to ramp up support for hard-hit smaller companies, proposing as much as 50,000 euros in monthly aid to help the nation's vaunted Mittelstand survive the coronavirus crisis. The proposal, seen by AFP, is currently being discussed with the finance ministry. excuse me, and is aimed at helping firms cover their fixed costs from June to December as the pandemic pushes Europe's top economy into its worst recession in decades. Time is running out for some companies. A spokesman for Economy Minister Peter Altmaier said to qualify for the support, applicants must prove that their revenues plunged by at least 60% year-on-year in April and May, when the impact of the coronavirus lockdowns hit hardest. The aid, up to a maximum of 50,000 euros a month, would be available to freelancers and companies that employ up to 249 workers. The plan is expected to cost the German state some 25 billion euros by August. The economy minister's proposal showed the total price tag will depend on how the country copes with the virus in the later months of the year. Germany has already launched a huge rescue package worth 1.1 trillion euros to steer the country through the coronavirus-induced downturn, even ditching its cherished policy of maintaining a balanced budget to finance the stimulus. The massive package includes state-backed loan guarantees, cash injections, and schemes to put millions of workers on reduced hours to avoid layoffs. Shops, factories, and restaurants are cautiously reopening, but the economic damage is far from over as social distancing rules prevent a further to business as usual. The German government aims to extend social distancing rules to July 5. And finally in our news, in a steamy Tokyo kitchen, a roasted scent wafts through the air as Yuta Shinohara prepares soup stock for ramen, derived not from pork or chicken, but crickets. Take a look.
まあ、今回素揚げのやつとかトッピングで乗せるので、通販サイト上でトッピングはありなしっていうのを選べる形になってるんですよ。でなしを選んだら、まあ、言ったら見た目では虫が入ってるとわからないラーメンなので、まあ、純粋に見た目的な嫌悪感とか先入観なくコオロギの味を楽しんでもらえるかなと思っていて。動物も植物も虫も、分け隔てなく、リスペクトされて理解される世の中を目指して今昆虫食の魅力を伝える活動をしています。
すごく香ばしくて、もちろんコオロギの味っていうのはそれ自体はわからないんですけど、すごく独特な風味があって、僕結構変わった味好きなんで、これがコオロギの味なのかっていう感じで結構感動的でした。
All right, before we go, I would like to greet a very happy birthday to our good friend and from our EBC Macau Bureau, Lawrence Florencio De Leon III. Happy 41st birthday. Sorry for saying your age. And of course, Brother Jonathan's birthday. He is the district choir a district choir director in Macau. Happy birthday to both of you from the Eagle Broadcasting Corporation. Happy birthday. And before we close, we leave you with a word of hope. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. See you again tomorrow evening. Good night. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.